we said there was a proximate cause there, apparently,
Yeah.
this ad campaign. But
But
there were some other things going on, right?
Yeah, there were a lot of other things going on. The American people wanted her fired. They wanted her removed. She was a political nightmare for the President of the United States. I mean, just take a look at this. Wanted Noam removed as DHS Secretary. Overall, last month, Quinnipiac University found the majority of Americans, 58%, wanted her to be adios amigos, goodbye, see you later. Among independents, you can see it right here, 62% of independents, we're talking more than 3 in 5 independents, wanted her kicked to the curb. So Donald Trump here making the politically popular move because Americans were simply put sick of Kristi Noem.
And this was well before this testimony that was so controversial. All right, how about her approval rating? How has that tracked?
Yeah, how is that tracked? Look, the idea that Kristi Noem is unpopular is not a new phenomenon. It's one that is dated all the way back to the beginning of Trump's second term. I mean, just take a look here. Okay, Kristi Noem's net popularity rating during Donald Trump's term, positive in none, zero, nada. None of the polls did she have a positive net approval rating. In all of the polls, she was underwater, swimming in the deep blue sea. She had a negative net popularity rating in every single poll conducted during Donald Trump's second term. Simply put, Americans did not like the job that she was doing as DHS Secretary. And recently, the clear majority of Americans, about 3 in 5, wanted her kicked to the curb, fired, as I said, by Donald Trump. So again, Trump doing what the American people wanted him to do.
You talk about her job as Secretary of Homeland Security. The immigration efforts that the president has been pushing, in theory, largely fall under Homeland Security's umbrella. How has that effort been greeted by the American people lately?
Yeah, this idea that Donald Trump could somehow contain Kristi Noem to just, her own little part of the world, right, and it wouldn't affect him, that is political fantasy. Kristi Noem was hurting Donald Trump in office on one of his key top issues that got him elected president of the United States. I mean, just take a look at Trump's net approval rating on immigration. You go back a little bit over a year ago, he was on the plus side of the ledger. Look at that. 2 thumbs up, plus 7 points. But again, down he goes, in large part because Kristi Noem's efforts. Look at this, minus 17 points on the net approval rating on a key issue for Donald Trump, one that got him elected to a second term. And among independents, he went from plus 3 net approval on immigration all the way down to minus 30 points. I mean, my goodness gracious, on a key issue that independents had trusted Donald Trump on over Kamala Harris, and Kristi Noem's efforts simply crushed Donald Trump on such a key issue for him.
Permission to touch the board here?
You can touch it.
All right, so she's out. The president's going to nominate Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin. If he is confirmed, that means there will be an open Senate seat in Oklahoma. There's a process. It'll be filled for a time being, but it will be on the ballot in November. He's a Republican.
Yes.
Open seat. What are the chances that Republicans hold that seat?
Yeah, I think the best part of Trump nominating Markwayne Mullin for this seat is, if you nominated somebody from, let's say, a purple state, there might be the chance that Republicans could lose that race. That is not going to happen in Oklahoma. Just take a look here at the Kalshi odds, right? Prediction markets. Chance the GOP wins the Oklahoma Senate race in 2026. Look at that. 95% chance. David Boren was the last Democrat elected from Oklahoma, and that was all the way back in 1990. Oklahoma is a red state and will continue to be red.
Noem has been on thin ice after multiple issues, including, of course, the shooting deaths of 2 U.S. citizens during immigration crackdowns in Minneapolis. But sources say the final straw was her testimony this week on Capitol Hill. Senator John Kennedy says the president was, quote, pissed after Noem testified that he approved a $220 million Homeland Security ad campaign that placed her front and center. CNN's Kevin Liptak is following all the details from the White House. What are you learning about how the White House has seen her performance there and that one issue that really got them riled up, apparently?
Yeah, there was this one issue that seemed to sort of shove her into the abyss in a lot of ways, but in other ways, this had been building for months and months. Her demise was something of an open question at the White House. They really viewed that situation in Minneapolis that ultimately led to the deaths of 2 American citizens on the streets as a leadership failure. There were power clashes with the heads of CBP and ICE. There were some serious questions about her spending, including on a luxury luxury jet with a full bedroom that the DHS claimed was going to be used for deportations. As one administration official put it yesterday, Christie's drama sadly overshadowed and distracted from the administration's extremely popular immigration agenda, which I think is something of an understatement. There was a lot of anger and frustration at how she had handled so much of her job. You know, the catalyst was this sort of humiliating appearance on Capitol Hill when she was repeatedly questioned about that $200 million plus ad campaign that put her at the very center. She claimed that the president was aware and in fact had approved of these ads. The president said he had nothing to do with it, or at least had no idea that they were spending the budget of a Marvel movie on these television advertisements. You know, Kristi Noem is now the first cabinet official to be dismissed in the president's second term. He had been making this concerted effort to try and avoid the drama that engulfed his first presidency, and he did find her a landing pad, which is this previously non-existent job as special envoy to the Southern Shield, which is this new security initiative for the Western Hemisphere. The president seems aware that people he dismissed, and he has this experience from his first term, often go out and give interviews or write books that portray him in a negative light. So he does seem aware that finding a place for them to land is an imperative. Now, the man he is replacing her with is the Oklahoma Senator, Markwayne Mullin. He's a top ally of President Trump. The president has praised his appearances on television. Mullin said yesterday that there would be the opportunity to build off her successes, but, quote, also the opportunity to build off things that maybe didn't go as planned. Sarah.
That is one way of putting it. Kevin Liptak, thank you so much. I do appreciate it.
Why do I love these wide open spaces? They remind me of why our forefathers came here. Not just for its beauty, but for the freedom only America provides. I'm Kristi Noem.
Well, commercials like those may have been part of Kristi Noem's downfall. Today, she was fired as DHS secretary. That ad, where she's saddled up, was one of a series of spots which reportedly cost taxpayers nearly $250 million. And her congressional testimony about it seems to have been the final straw, or a final straw, for President Trump. There were plenty of other straws already. In any case, the president made the announcement on social media about 20 minutes before she was scheduled to speak in Nashville. The president named her replacement, Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin, and said that Secretary Noem would soon be taking up a new job, special envoy for a security initiative called the Shield of the Americas. He promised to give more details on that over the weekend from his golf resort near Miami. There is little question, however, that it is a downgrade from running an agency of 250,000 men and women charged with protecting Americans from security threats at home, especially with the country at war against a longtime sponsor of global terror. Again, this comes after a string of public missteps, many of which came up in congressional hearings this week, with a number of Republicans, including Senator and Trump loyalist John Kennedy, leading the charge.
The president approved ahead of time you spending $220 million running TV ads across the country in which you are featured prominently.
Yes, sir. We went through the legal processes, did it correctly.
Did the president know you were going to do this?
Yes.
He did?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Well, the president is on record saying he did not, and CNN has learned he did not like the secretary implicating him. This is how ProPublica last fall headlined their story on the ads. Firm tied to Kristi Noem secretly got money from $220 million DHS ad contracts. The company is run by the husband of Noem's chief DHS spokesperson and has personal and business time to Noem and her aides. ProPublica also reports that DHS invoked what it termed the emergency at the border to actually skirt competitive bidding rules for the ad contracts, one of which went to a company run by the ex-husband of former DHS spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin. Now, another, worth some $143 million, was awarded to an outfit which had only been in business for less than 2 weeks. If the president was bothered about it at the time, he didn't say. He wasn't troubled either at the time by Secretary Noem's appetite for the cameras and cosplay as she traveled from one photo op to another, frequently with her aide Corey Lewandowski, sometimes in a customized Boeing 737 equipped with a bedroom. But that may have changed with her testimony about it and other things this week.
Could you explain this?
Sir, I'm looking at a picture of an interior, looks like a bedroom.
Of an airplane?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
You're not familiar with that?
These photos are not accurate. If you're referring to the airplanes that the Department of Homeland Security has purchased and are purchasing, we're using them for long-range command and control aircraft that is dictated in statute by Congress for the Department of Homeland Security to have a plane.
Luxury jet with a bedroom in it?
Yeah, we used a 737.
Does it have a bedroom in
In
it?
fact, we spent $1.42 billion on ICE deportation flights
Does it
last
have a bedroom
year.
in it?
I believe it's being refurbished and not having a bedroom in it. So it is being refurbished.
Kristi Noem, of course, is married. Corey Lewandowski is married. He is expected to leave DHS as well. He told the New York Post today that he would not speculate on whether testimony like this about the two of them before the House Judiciary Committee cost her the DHS job. But it was certainly more bad publicity for the administration.
So, Secretary Noem, at any time during your tenure as Director of Department of Homeland Security, have you had sexual relations with Corey Lewandowski?
Mr. Chairman, I am shocked that we're going down and peddling tabloid garbage in this committee today.
Well, she was pressed repeatedly on the subject and continued to give answers like that, but never once denied the allegation. Another factor in her departure might have been the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy by federal agents in Minneapolis, or the lies she told in the wake of them.
When you perpetuate violence against a government because of ideological reasons and for reasons to resist and perpetuate violence, that is the definition of domestic terrorism.
Well, she said that just hours after Alex Preddy's killing. Here's what she said under oath this week.
You said that they were domestic terrorists. Do you regret that?
I offer my condolences to those family. And again,
based on what you know today, were Renee Good and
stand
Alex
alone.
Preddy domestic terrorists?
There's ongoing investigations, and so I
So
cannot
you still don't know? You think that's an open question?
I would think you would want there to still be investigations going into these situations.
Well, you
We'll
stated the
continue to
conclusion 2 hours after they were killed that they were domestic terrorists.
Again, we do not know what motivated the president to fire her, only that he had plenty to choose from, which the hearing this week threw a spotlight on, even the admission she made in her memoirs, which sparked headlines when she was appointed, that she had shot and killed her dog Cricket because she was, quote, untrainable.
The passage where you talk about killing a dog that was 14 months old. I train dogs, all right? And you are a farmer. You should know better. You decided to kill that dog because you had not invested the appropriate time in training, and then you have the audacity to go into a book and say it's a leadership lesson about tough choices. But my point is, those are bad decisions made in the heat of the moment, not unlike what happened up in Minneapolis. We're an exceptional nation. And one of the reasons we're exceptional is we expect exceptional leadership. And you've demonstrated anything but that.
And CNN's Caitlin Collins joins us now with more. Caitlin, in any other administration in the modern history, since the Homeland Security Department was formed, if the Secretary of Homeland Security had awarded no-bid contracts for more than $100 million to companies that were newly created that had ties to people that she worked with and knew and had relationships with, I mean, that person would have been investigated at the very least. Is there any sense that this Department of Justice hasn't shown any indication that it's going to investigate these contracts, but in any other administration, I would think they would be investigated.
Yeah, they haven't shown any inkling of that's happening. We don't have reporting on that. But there are lawmakers who were saying and accusing Secretary Noem of lying under oath yesterday when she was saying that it wasn't done by Corey Lewandowski, of course, the person who's been serving as a special government employee to her. But I think in that moment, and this is actually something that has bothered and rankled a lot of people in the president's orbit, these contracts, how they were awarded, the fact that they spent $250 million on these ads that you see here, prominently featuring Secretary Noem. A lot of people had actually tried to get the president's focus on this because they knew that he wouldn't like it. It was something that a lot of people have been talking about here in Washington for months now. But it wasn't until that line of questioning from Senator Kennedy, which he told reporters, he gave the White House a heads up that he wasn't going to have friendly questions for the DHS secretary when she came before his committee. It was that line of questioning, though, that got the president's attention, and particularly Anderson, where he asked if the president had signed off on her doing these ads for $220 million. And she quickly answers yes there. And obviously the president contradicted that today and told Reuters that he had not signed off on it. And when we asked the White House about that today, they just pointed to his own comment here. That was really the last straw for him, because the president does not like when people are using money around him that is tied to him, whether it's taxpayer money or his own political money, for their own benefit. And he also doesn't like when people try to eclipse him or try to use him to build their own profile. And those are two things, that are kind of the third rail in President Trump's orbit. And a lot of people know that. And obviously this crossed the line here with Secretary Noem, someone who I should note, though, has been on thin ice basically since January, since the killing of the 2 Americans at the hands of federal agents. I was there in the cabinet meeting that day in late January, when the president, notably skipped over her, something I've never seen him do, because the Department of Homeland Security is one he is deeply invested in. It's one of his favorites. And so, that moment kind of said it all and put the writing on the wall. But obviously it culminated in this today, where the president was so frustrated by that and finally took this moment to do something that it's actually really notable, because he has not wanted to fire anyone from his cabinet. Notice he's just, anytime they've moved people around, they've shifted them to other jobs. He's not wanted to have the same turnover that he did in his first term. So it is notable that he still went as far as he did to take this step, because he's really resisted doing so far.
Yeah.